Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel and this update for Pan That Huge palette. Last year I worked for about 5 months on a really huge palette from Technic. It's called Wow Factor Remastered. It contains 105 eyeshadows, 7 lip glosses and 7 face products. So for 5 months, I think it's 5 months. It might be 6 now, but I think it's for 5 months I have been working on this. My goal every time has been to hit pan every month and use at least 20 shades in the palette. I have done very well, if I do say so myself, and this month's progress is no different. It is actually a whole lot better. So I want to take you back to the last update where the palette looked like this in the beginning of the video, but then I also frankened some shades into 2 blushes. I haven't done frankening a lot, but I had totally forgotten that the shades you make, they turn out a lot lighter when they actually dry down. So when these actually dried down, one of the shades were very subtle, like a very subtle blush, and it was beautiful. The other shade turned out to be more like a highlighter or a blush topper, which I didn't mind at all. It was very beautiful, but I actually finished both of those shades, and the highlighters and the bronzers, they were getting huge pans. So I was like, okay, let's franken some more blushes, or at least one. I decided to franken those 2 bronzers together in one pan, and then I just wanted to scratch off some product in, I think, what was left of the blush and some of the highlighters, just to be able to pick it up better. So now you can see how this palette actually looked after I had repressed and frankened a bunch of shades. And so you can probably see that I hit 2 pans already, but let's talk about them when I now show you how it looks, you know, right now. So this is how it looks. I hope you can see quite a bit of a difference actually, especially in the in these shades. I have used up all the crushed up shades. I've actually used up this white as well. So that is my first empty pan of the year, which is so exciting. My goal is to finish at least 20 shades this year. Not in here, but like overall. If I can finish more in here, that's great. But yeah, by actually frankening this blush, I get pan on this red up here and this yellow down here. So we do have a little bit of like a sparkle going on here and this matte red. So that's how I made this one, of course, together with a bunch of other different shades. So that together with last month's progress where I actually hit pan by frankening those blushes, which I have now used up. So I feel like these pans are for real, you know, because I actually used all of that product. So this yellow here, this pink here, and this kind of orangey brown I also hit pan on in that session. So in these 2 updates, I've actually hit pan on 5 shades. I have used up, you know, from the last time, and I have started using this blush that I frankened down here. I've used up this blush that I frankened last time. I have, like I said, brought the 2 bronzers together. I thought it would make it a lot easier. I thought I would have used up the bronzer by now, but I haven't. But it's a lovely shade, especially now in winter. It's very subtle. I love it. And yeah, let's go through what I've done this this month, or past 2 months, because I didn't update you guys on this last month. So I have used 37 shades in here, which is awesome. Awesome. I used up 1 shade, the white one here in the corner. Like I said, it was the best. I used it today underneath my brows, and that's how I used it up. I also used 5 new shades that I hadn't touched before, which is also like a little semi-goal of mine, because I do want to touch all the shades eventually, you know, and I don't want anything to be untouched, because if there is a shade in here that I haven't touched because it's too hard, and that is, you know, left to the end, that's going to be really hard to hit pan on. So I do want a good variety of like usage in this palette, if it makes any sense. So those 5 shades, I know that I used a couple of grays. I think this one was one of them. Yeah, I've used a couple of a couple of grays, which is nice. I feel like I have gotten into using grays. I don't think I will do it that much, you know, now in springtime when we get to that. But as for like a wintry look, I just feel like I actually look good in a smoky eye, and I do look good in grays. And I just love it. And I love silvers. I have silver going to green today. I actually used these two green shades to accomplish this with some other shades from other projects. So that was all of my stats, and I could go into some of the shades that I've used more, but I thought today, because it's the first video of the year with this palette, I thought we would go through the usage on the whole palette. Yes, I said it. It's going to take some time. But I do want to show you what I have accomplished, because when you use a smaller palette, it's so much easier to talk about all of the shades. I don't do that in every update. I don't even talk about all of the shades that I've used during the month. So I thought once a year, or maybe if you want a mid-year update as well, I will show you the numbers on this whole palette. I want to tell you the usage on all of these shades. So we're going to go through them one by one. I'm just going to tell you how many times I've used it. I thought about taking a picture and just writing it in there, but I don't think you will be able to see it because it's such a huge palette. But I feel like since I have been doing this for 5 months or 6, I have pretty good usage on a lot of these shades actually. So I think this will be encouraging for me to see how many times I've used every shade, because some of these look untouched even though I've actually used them, and some of these I've used pretty much but you can't see it. And when you have a smaller palette, you will see like one pan makes a huge difference, but in a big palette like this, it can seem a little bit daunting and discouraging if you don't see all of that progress. But today I thought we would go through all of the usage that I have on this. So let's get going. So let's start with the top row. I haven't used these first 2 shades. The third shade, the pink, I have used 8 times. The yellow I've used 1 time, except for also frankening it, and that's why I have pan. This blue I've actually used 22 times. Wow, I had forgotten about that, but I actually mix this with a brown to make like a cooler tone brown. I haven't used this one. This one I've used 5 times, 3 times, 1 time, 3 times, 5 times, 7 times. I haven't used this one at all. I've used this once and this none at all. So let's move on to the second row where I haven't used these 2 at all except for frankening with. This one I've used 4 times. This blue I've used twice. I haven't used any of these blue shades here. Moving on to this one, I've used once. This one, I've used 5 times. The light pink shimmer here, I've used 3 times. This one I've used twice. This one I've used 9 times. This one I've also used 9 times. The dark gray I've used once. This one I've used once. This one I haven't used at all. Okay, 2 rows in, how did I do? I think we're doing pretty well. So let's move on to the third row. This beige one I've used 58 times, and you can actually see that because I have such a big pan. This one I've used for frankening, of course. Like all of these shades that you can see scratch marks in, I've used for frankening. So I don't actually count those uses. I have it written down how many times I've used the blushes, but it's like in another section. So you won't get that in this usage, if that makes sense. Okay, so I've used that one 58 times, this one 3 times, this one twice, 0 times, 1 time, 0. I've used this one twice, none. This one I've used 13 times and frankened with. The next one I've used 4 times. The gold I've used twice. The orange I've used 4 times. The 13th shade I haven't used at all. I have used the black one 80 times though. That is a lot, and you can't see much pan for that usage. And then the shade afterwards I haven't used at all. So I feel like we can begin to see like a pattern. I haven't used all of the grays and I haven't used all of the blues. Like those are the ones that I tend to not use too much, but I have dabbled in it. I have tried to use them, but it's good to go through the numbers because it does make me realize what I have used and what I haven't. So row 4, row D in my book. So we have A, B, C, D, and then we have all of the numbers up to 15. So row D, we start off with this brown one here, which I haven't used at all. This wine red I've used 3 times and of course frankened with. This one I've used twice. These upcoming 3 shades I haven't used at all. So let's move on to the lavender here. and I've used this one 9 times. I haven't used these two, but I have used that one 10 times. I haven't used this one, but I've used this one 3 times. I haven't used this one or this one, but this one I have used 9 times. And I think this one is the next pan I'm gonna hit. It works wonderfully in my inner corners or like in the inner third of my eyes. It's lovely. I love it. So yeah, next row, we're over halfway there, so bear with me. This champagne shimmer here I've used 22 times, and we do have a pretty decent pan in that one. This one, of course, I've used for frankening, but I've also used it twice. This one I haven't used. This one I've used twice. This one I've used 4 times. I haven't used this one except for frankening with. I haven't used this one. This one, however, I have used 7 times. This one I've used twice. This goldy shade here I've used 8 times. This brown I've used 5 times. This one I haven't used at all. This is a white shimmer that I've used 5 times. And I haven't used these 2 last shades at all. Moving on to the next row, we have an orange here that I've used 6 times and frankened with. I've used this orange 5 times. I haven't used this one at all. This turquoise color I've used 7 times. The green shimmer I've used once. This green I haven't used at all. This lavender shade, I love this. I've used it 10 times. This bluish purple shade here I've used 4 times. This one I've used once, 0 times. I've used this one 6 times, and I haven't used the rest of the shades on this row. So all of the grays again go untouched. So moving on to the last row, this I haven't used at all. This one, which has the huge pan in it, I hope this can be my next empty maybe. This one I've used 57 times. This dark red I've used twice. This light shimmer I've used once. This one I've used once. This green I've used twice. This one I haven't touched. The dark purple I've used 6 times, and I've also gotten some of it in this in this gloss, so I have used it a little bit more, a tiny bit more. This one I've used twice. This light gold I've used twice. This one I've used once. This cool brown here I've used 29 times. This one I've used twice. I've used this one once. And this one I've used 67 times to use it up. Then we have all the glosses. There are 7 of them, but as you can see, I have tape over these to not get so much pigment into them. So I've only used this one in the middle, and I've used that 27 times. Not too bad. I am not worrying about these ones. I'm just using them whenever I want to, especially if I want a purpley one. I do mix these two because I find that I don't really have any purple leaning lipstick, so it actually works pretty good for that. Now let's talk about the highlighters here. I've used this one 99 times. This one beside it that is a little bit warmer, I've used 119 times. This blush I have here, I frankened from these shades like I've said before, but the blush before it I used up in 79 uses. This one I used up in 78 uses. The powder I've used 10 times in total. This bronzer I used 74 times, and this one I used 73 times. Of course, whenever I use it now, since I franken them together, they each get 1 use. But that was all of the numbers. Yeah, it's a lot, but it's really nice to know that I have used so much of this palette. Like most of the shades, at least more than half of them I have actually used, and quite a few of them actually have dips going on. I've realized these last 2 months maybe that I love pastel shades like this one. I used it today, like I said, but I love them because I can just go ham on them, you know? I don't have to be careful. They start out very light and you can build them up, and you do see quite a bit of a difference like in one use. If you use a lot of it, you can see like the matte shade actually form a dip, and I love that feeling when I feel like I'm actually making a dent, you know? So I love that. I love how it looks on me, and yeah, I'm still surprised by some of these shades and some of the formula. I feel like every shade is its own adventure because yeah, you never know what you get before you actually use it. I feel like some of these shades are as good and as creamy as a Natasha Denona shade. So we have like this lavender shade here. I think it was the same with this one, and like they're really creamy, really shimmery, like all of that. Really like those. Then we have some that are on the drier side, some that you have to build up, some that are really pigmented, some that are pretty loosely pressed, some that are really hard pressed. Like I couldn't make any predictions about how fast I would use up a shade, because of course it depends on how I use it. I mean, if I've used this one, what did I say, 80 times, and I only have the tiniest pan, you know, I've used that 80 times, but I used this one up in 67 times. So it definitely depends on how you use it and how much you use, but also the formula. Like I couldn't make any prediction based on the formula, because the formula is just, it varies so much within this palette. However, I am so excited about this still. Even though I have broken it and the lid is off, I do have it here in front of me. So like I can still close it. I don't feel like moisture is getting into it or anything like that. But so far so good. Let's see what this year brings. Like how much can I do in 1 year? I guess that's the question. But let's take a picture right here to see where we're at in the beginning of the year, and then at the end of the year, of course, we should have like a comparison and see what we've done in 1 year. Since this is an ongoing project and I want to finish this at some point, I don't really know how much I will use it right now, since I have so many other projects going on and so many eyeshadow projects going on. But I do feel like it is a really nice companion. I didn't think I would use it today, for example, but having those two greens in this look, it really turned out nicely. So I feel like this is a really good companion palette, and if I can use 1 or 2 shades every day, I think that's enough actually to make some really good progress, especially if I have like one that I focus on, like this one in my inner corner, and maybe use 1 other shade every day. That should get us to the goal, right? At some point. So yeah, that was a lot for an update, wasn't it? But I am so happy with how this looks after just a few months. And knowing that I can Franken shades and it works. Like I loved the blush that I made, or blushes. This one turned out a lot darker and a lot more pigmented. So, you know, I still like it, but it's harder to use up because it's so pigmented, so I don't need as much of it. But I am sure that when this is done, I am dying to make my own customized bronzer. That would be awesome. That would be so much fun. And highlighters, I don't know. I think I should work on my other highlighters. Like, I'm not a highlighter girl. I could go without highlighter most of the days. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video and are really excited for this year to come. And I hope I'll see you in the next update. Have a great evening. Bye.